Welcome to Freedom Decoded. This podcast is from us. We are Carey and Demir Bentley, productivity coaches and co-founders of the Lifehack method. This format is where we are going two-on-one. Demir and I both coaching one of our amazing Lifehack tribe members on the productivity issues that are keeping them stuck and keeping them held back from their highest self and from achieving their ideal life. So we hope you enjoyed this in-depth coaching session. It is completely raw and unfiltered, and we hope that you get so much out of it.
Awesome. Hey, Mitch, how you doing, buddy?
Hello, Demir and Carey.
Thank you so much for doing this with us. This is our first two-on-one coaching session here on the Freedom Decoded podcast. And we are thrilled to be here with you, Mitch. I know you're a tribe member, a Lifehack tribe member of quite a few years, and you have been having a lot of success with the program. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about who you are, what you do, what you've been working on so far, and what brought you here today on the podcast?
Sure. So I've been a Lutheran pastor for 35 years. The first 31 years I was serving congregations. And for the last 4, I've been working in the office of one of our regional judicatories. We've got 65 of them across the country. So my boss is our bishop. I serve as her chief of staff as part of my role. So I want to let you know that she's totally on board here with what we're doing. When I joined Tribe, one of the perks was copy the audiobook. So after I listened to it and then made my wife listen to it as we were driving on vacation, I shared it with my boss and she told me, I really didn't want to like this, but he convicted me. Then she started picking up on some of the lingo. She'll walk into my office and say, well, I'm bringing you some UUW.
No way. That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, totally. And then I did your Asana Mastery course, which I love. And she, of course, heard about it in the book. And so she and I have been using Asana together for a little while. And next week, I'm onboarding the rest of our office.
Woo!
We've got 4 other people here in our office. We'll be adding 2 more people in August. And so we're going to be looking at Asana. We use Basecamp for communication, but we need something better for the task management. So if that's part of your solution in your coaching, know that we're on board with Asana.
Hey, Mitch, before you get into the problem that we're going to coach on today, give me like the quickest lightning summary of what you've experienced so far in Tribe, meaning like, what did you tackle? What have you gotten a handle on? And then we'll get into the problem of like, okay, great. What are we going to talk about today and take it to the next level?
Sure. So I started in Tribe a little over 2 years ago, slowly worked my way through the roadmap, worked on a life map. I've done Coach Amy's life map session a couple of times. Loved, Demir, your refresh of the massive clarity section that you did, because this year I went back to work through the roadmap again. And so my life map, I think, is in pretty good shape. I like the mission statement, the vision, the training you did around AI that gave me more insight into how you work with the life map weekly and daily goals and stuff was golden. So that I've been a regular on the weekly pre-planning calls, but then the secret sauce was winning the day. That, like a lot of people, I would go into a week with a plan, and my job, things come at me and things get scrambled. By the middle of the week, my Asana list is bloated. I'm feeling like things are just out the window. Winning the day has helped so much with, being able to refocus each day, get clarity. Yeah, these things aren't happening. We're shoving them down the line in Asana and just having that community there. So that's my second trip through the roadmap. I'm down into the system stuff and plan. We've got vacation coming up in the next 2 weeks. So once I get back, I'm going to be into the time tracking stuff.
Nice.
That's where the section is.
If you were going to just wrap up in 3 sort of results that you've gotten from being a tribe member so far, what would you say that those would be?
I would say that the life map, with having a greater sense of clarity and balance between work and life objectives, I had tried other planning stuff before, but Lifehack is what really stuck for me. And so the weekly planning and then winning the day supercharged it. And then especially having Asana as the action platform for tracking tasks.
Yes. So it sounds like so far you've gotten a regular planning habit out of it where you're winning your weeks more than you're not. You've got that radical clarity that's also bringing more balance into your life. And then you're starting to flex into some of the more advanced stuff like creating systems. And Asana really is the foundation for that. We use Asana as the foundation for expanding into SOPs and systems and delegations and all that kind of great stuff. Awesome. Great. So why don't you lay out for us what we want to talk about today to take it to the next level?
So the largest part of my role, my title is Assistant to the Bishop for Leadership. The largest part of my role is working with congregations that are in the call process as they're seeking a new pastor. And then, of course, I'm working with pastors who are open to serving in a new congregation. So what I'm hoping for today is to tap into some of your knowledge and experience around coaching and around systems. For congregations that are in the call process, it's a time of huge anxiety for them. Their pastor is left. Sometimes this has been a long tenured pastor, 15, 20, 25 years. And so anxiety's through the roof. They want to get a new pastor right away. We know from our experience that's not smart because it acts like a rebound marriage. And so we want them to move through it in appropriate timing. And so in some ways, I'm a coach through this process, but I'm not a coach because I'm not trying to do something that we want them to get good at, that they're going to replicate. For people, this is hopefully their first and only time serving on the search committee for the pastor. And so I describe myself more like a guide in a forest or on a mountain.
The word that came to me was a Sherpa. Yeah. The guys who've climbed Mount Everest, 15, 16 times, they're there to show you where, hey, don't step there. We got to go up this path. It's too dangerous. The weather's not good. So
Yep.
Because the conditions on the mountain are changing and the composition of the group is always different.
Yep.
There's different factors. It's not a cut and paste process, but you are there with the experience to guide them up the mountain.
Exactly. And the path up the mountain is going to vary depending on the context, the congregation. They think they know how to do this, but I'm the one who knows where the bodies are buried, where things can go wrong and stuff like that. So exactly, that's the analogy that I use. Because of their anxiety, of course, they want to jump over the steps. They want to leave base camp and then be viewing the vista from the top. But we've got steps to get through to get there, but they're not always the same steps. So I don't lay out for them, here's your process A to Z, because they may not need some of the steps along the way. And part of my role is to help them to discern which is the next objective, which is the next overnight camp we're getting to on the way up the mountain. And relationship is key in this. Sometimes congregations have a tenuous relationship with the synod office. And so this is my opportunity to strengthen that relationship, help them build trust. And I get that feedback in spades at the end of the process. So I know I'm doing good with that. What I've developed is I have resources to share with them along the way. Those resources are delivered in a large PDF that may have multiple documents within it. So they've got resources that are in there. The challenge for me is that I'm getting people asking me questions that I know were answered in those documents. I'm thinking I need a different way of delivering this resource. I've thought about making individual documents available on our website and just giving people access to the right section of the website at the right time. So that's one of my questions for you with some of your delivery of stuff. What are mechanisms for that? Because what I want to do is make sure I've got the time to talk with them about what makes their situation unique and addressing those concerns. So some of my time with them, at least initially, is in person, face-to-face meetings, but then we'll do Zoom for some of the stuff. Like when I coach them on interviewing, I can do that on Zoom because it takes less time than it does to drive there. But then they might be asking me, the pastor we're interviewing wants to do this. Is that normal? Well, it's not normal, but it's okay. And so I make myself available via Zoom, phone, email, that folks can contact me.
We'll probably get to some more detail. Carey, do you want to pull out some themes that you're seeing here?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll just take a step back too, because Demir's the one that gets to coach everyone in Lifehack Tribe all the time. And he's probably already talked at length with Mitch. This is my first time. And I just want to congratulate you, Mitch, on getting so far with the Lifehack method. We have a lot of clients come in a state of overwhelm. They don't know where their time is going. They're just seeking out a system, any system that can help them manage that chaos. And it sounds like you've really achieved all the sort of the three sides of our massive action model in terms of having your life map, which is your ladder from where you are today to where you want to be in the future. You've got your to-do list really on steroids with Asana and working that system and getting your to-dos under control. And of course, you're running your now the win the day and win the week system. So you actually are planning and replanning and really, really making sure that you're on top of where all your time is going, which just by your demeanor is clearly resulting in much better days and much better weeks. So this is awesome progress that we're seeing. And now you're sort of getting into the more advanced stuff, which is really fun and really exciting because now we get to have like higher level conversations with you and learn how to apply the Lifehack method in those ways. So one of the big things that jumped out at me was an issue that a lot of professionals run into, which is, hey, I've improved my workflow and I understand how to make my personal life better, but I have to contend with other people who might not have their workflow under control and or do not have those boundaries that I have. And you have to really step up your game in terms of creating those boundaries in order to help other people interact with you in a way where you're not trying to control them. Okay. You're not in charge of other people. You can't ever make anyone do what you say. I have 3 kids, so I know, but it is an act of, hey, especially in mission motivated positions like yours. Okay. You're a pastor. We have a lot of clients who are in nonprofit, and they're mission driven, right? Which tends to mean that their boundaries become extremely porous and they really have to level up. Yeah. We have a lot of clients in this position. So when your boundaries are porous, it's natural because you want to do good work. You want to create an impact. You're mission driven. But as you also know, you can do it for much longer and spend a lot more years impacting people if you can get solid boundaries in place. So yeah, I think that was one of the themes that jumped out at me, Demir.
Yeah.
How about for you, Demir? What are the other themes that you picked up on?
Yeah, I'm seeing 3 key themes here, right? Number 1 is you're repeating yourself a lot and it's draining your time and energy. And so you're asking yourself, hey, am I getting this information across in the right way? Because if I was, I wouldn't have to repeat myself so much. And I'm getting questions that are indicating that people are not interfacing with the materials that I'm giving them that are designed to make the process go smoother, and yet they're not interfacing it. And boy, can we ever relate to this. Like this is a constant battle with us too, which is what's too little, what's too much. That leads to the second seeing here, which is information overload and just-in-time information. We will often get a client who will come into us and they will be so excited and they will genuinely feel like, show me the whole path, show me everything. I want to see everything. And then they will gorge on that information, get scared, get overwhelmed, see that the process has more steps than they thought it did, and get freaked out and disengage from the process. So there's a loss of trust. So the second theme is, how do we manage information overload and give them just-in-time information, right? And in a way where we're gaining trust with them and they're not feeling overloaded. And the third major theme is just balancing that. And this was what Carey was speaking to, balancing a mission-driven, high-touch support role that is very relational with some level of personal boundaries, right? So what I want to do is we're going to really hit the first two themes, and then we'll look at the clock and see how much time we have. And if we can,
Yep.
we'll hit that third one. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Carey, do you want to frame up our first recommendation here a little bit?
Okay, so the first theme that we wanted to talk about was evolving the concept of an SOP. So it sounds like you have a pretty good handle on the basic sense of an SOP, which is literally standard operating procedure. It's a set of instructions, mostly given to like a virtual assistant. The easiest version is a checklist where it's just like, here's how to do this task in order, do all these things. It sounds like you're starting to get to the realm where you're trying to guide people and everyone's path is different. So you're not even guiding them up necessarily the same mountain, even though the destination is the same. There might be a new path every single time. So what you want to do is evolve your idea of what an SOP can be to include things like a set of trainings. You must have some kind of basic level trainings, not just PDFs. It can involve other types of information like videos. You could even use Loom to walk them through the PDFs that you have, but also case studies. Case studies are a really powerful way to think about SOPs because it's like, it's describing to someone what to do right and what to do that would be wrong. So for example, if I'm trying to onboard a new graphic designer, it's really hard to be like, here's the exact steps to take to deliver this output, this asset, because it's a new asset. I mean, I don't even know what I really want half the time. So the best resource I can give someone in that position is some case studies. Oh, here's some examples of work that I really like that we've done in the past for brands. And here's some stuff that people have done for me that I really don't like. And that would be like off brand for me. And I think you alluded to this a little bit in your introduction. You know where all the bodies are buried.
Yeah.
So let's expose the bodies and let's, maybe a really good starting point for a lot of people would be like, okay, let's strike some fear a little bit and just make sure that you are giving this process the importance and, the respect that it deserves by explaining to you how horribly wrong it can go. Fear is a really powerful motivator. Don't want to overuse that, obviously, but you would use fear in combination with then the support of like, well, here's some great case studies, not to fear. I'm your Sherpa. Here's the great case studies that you can look at as well, so that you can be assured that I am the right resource for you to guide you up this mountain.
I just want to add on to this point, Mitch. What's great about the human brain is that we're very much monkey see, monkey do interpolating engines. You could potentially write 50 pages of text and it might not convey as much information as giving them 3 good examples of how it went right and 3 bad examples of how it went badly. Because in those stories, first, stories are easier to engage with people. It's just more engaging content. So they're more likely to stick with it and read it all the way through to see what's the ending? How did this end? Right? I want to know what the end of the story was. But also you're trusting them to interpolate the logic and the frame and the norms inside of that. And they might not even be able to spit it back out to you exactly, but they've sort of internalized it. And so when Carey is saying, let's evolve the concept of an SOP, a great SOP is 5 good examples, 5 bad examples, or in your case, it would be 5 good, or 3, whatever the number might be, 3 great case studies of how this went really well and why you think it went so well, and 3 poor case studies of things that maybe didn't go so well and why you think they didn't go so well. Then you compare that with maybe something that's less about rules and more about norms and culture. So, hey, here's what you'll see from your perspective. They're probably going to be very anchored in, almost over anchored in their fears and hopes and dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And what might be a great thing to pair with it is a document that says, hey, what does the other side of this fence look like? So you're a really great candidate as a pastor. You've just finished an amazing tenure at this church. What's going through your brain when you're evaluating churches that you might want to go become a 15-year, 20-year, 25-year pastor at? So help them look through the lens of a pastor. And the document could be called From the Lens of Your Ideal Pastor. Because often where negotiations go wrong is where people get over-anchored in their frame and under-anchored in the opposing frame. And so what we're really sort of suggesting here is that you evolve your concept of SOPs to give them documents that are both shorter, more compelling and readable, but also through which they can actually interpolate the things that you're trying to tell them rather than explicitly read through 50 pages of do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. Now, I want to give you a chance to react here. How's this landing with you?
That is great. When Carey was talking about, a little bit of fear, the phrase that struck me is I can imagine Sherpas saying, you have to respect the mountain. And that is part of some of what I articulate, but perhaps at the time I'm articulating it is not particularly helpful, because part of my story with them is sharing that, when you are trying to call a pastor, this is not a hiring process like you're used to in HR. This is discernment, mutual discernment. It's called. This is this person's mission and purpose in life. And so I love the idea of, and that's where my brain was getting stuck, because I always, my interpretation of an SOP is this is your standard operating procedure. You do this, 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 and this. But the idea of evolving that, and this is something that the bishop and I have talked about, is where can we leverage video and stories that still allows us to engage in a personal way after we've created the relationship with them, so they know who we are. And so, what you're suggesting with some of the good examples, bad examples, to even do those in a narrative way, or, I'm feeling really anxious, we're getting frustrated. Well, let me tell you the story about a congregation that, and by this time I've got 3 or 4 of these, where congregations were really frustrated with the process. Then all of a sudden, the right candidate came along and they fell in love with each other.
Love it. And let me just kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. The other thing is, when you're onboarding somebody and taking them through a process where they're liable to want to skip steps or overconsume or second guess your judgment, one of the other great things that this does is sort of put a little bit of healthy fear into them around what it would look like to skip steps or not trust you, which the inverse of that then becomes, hey, maybe I should trust Mitch. He's clearly seen a lot before, and he's seen this go badly. So a key part of getting somebody to go through your onboarding is quickly gaining trust and credibility with them. And so what's great about these more evolved SOPs, like case studies or through the lens of the pastor or norms, not regulations, is you can get them rapidly into a sense of trust.
Yeah.
And that's where you want them to be. Because if you're if you're in a boat and choppy waters hit and the captain's looking around thinking, well, what do these buttons do? You're going to be more liable to want to grab the wheel away from the captain. But when you feel that the captain has decades of experience and you've been talking to them and you just see that they can masterfully navigate, you're more likely to just say, let me not bother this guy right now. Let me ask them, hey, what do you need? What should I be doing right now? Rather than, hey, let me grab hold of the process and yank the process away, which is not a selfish thing. It's more about you and I just know they're going to get a worse experience if they start grabbing at the wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because I'm the type of person who's very no nonsense. If I had a client in a room, I could give them the whole Lifehack method in less than a day. I mean, it would just be, here's exactly what to do. Follow these steps. You will get results. Done. No problem. Great. The world has changed. And I have learned painstakingly over the last 10 years that is not how you get anybody to do anything. So we spend so much more time almost pre-selling them on everything, not even in our sales pages, not in the classic sense of the word sell, more just making sure that we take the extra time to get them in the right mindset before we offer even any coaching. Because we know that even really helpful coaching and guide can fall on deaf ears if the person isn't in the right mindset first. So in everything we do now, like you mentioned, storytelling, so powerful. I mean, it it activates parts of our mind that are mostly inactive, especially when we're just like reading information. So any kind of stories that you can use, honestly, if it could be like 100% stories, that would be ideal. That's even for managers, any managers who are listening right now, this is such a powerful tool to use for leadership is, hey, if you're trying to get through to your team, you're trying to influence somebody to do better work or different work, let's think about how you can actually be persuasive with your language and influence using stories or examples rather than thinking about, the carrot and the stick or just being like a cudgel or micromanaging them.
There is still going to be a place for your 1, 2, 3 ABC SOPs, but you'll probably want to fractionalize them, atomize them down into smaller SOPs. So in the beginning, the SOPs are going to look a lot more like case studies, stories, frames. Like, let's look at this through the frame of the ideal pastor. What are they thinking? What are they feeling right now? Where's their emotion? Where's their mindset? What are their logical, tactical concerns that are present to them? Because they're just so present in their own frame. They're liable to miss and misunderstand the frame of the other person. But then when you get that trust and you get that engagement, then they're going to be more open and receptive to following a specific 1, 2, 3 ABC SOP. For the sake of time, can I move to the second one?
Yes, I am so dying for you to go over this next part, Demir, because I know that this is going to be such a game changer for Mitch. So yes, please.
I wanted to talk about the way that we can get people to follow the directions that we give them. And so one of the things that I do is I have a boot camp that I recruit in for. It's an hour-long call. The problem, Mitch, is that if somebody has done zero work preparing for that call, even 3 hours, 5 hours won't be enough. But if they have done the right amount of work, 30 minutes could be enough. So you really want to get your client, in this case, your client, but I know this is a more sacred journey than that, but I'm just going to refer to them as the client in this case. You want to get them in a place where they are taking the calls with you very seriously and they're engaging with the materials that you've given them in a serious way so that, and I know that you feel this already, you're almost scratching your head like, I created this out of love for you so that you can get more out of our relationship, and yet you're not engaging with them. So I wanted to share with you a little bit of the tricks that I engage with a little bit to get people to take it a little bit more seriously. Number one is probably so easy that is a bit of a head slapper. However much you think you're bothering them, you need to bother them more to get them to engage with the material. And so you might be reminding them once, hey, we've got a meeting coming up on Wednesday. Let's make sure that we check in with those materials. And that might need to look like 3 times. Okay. Right. And through multiple stakeholders and multiple venues, maybe email with a little text follow-up. Hey, emailed you, but you might miss it. Just wanted to make sure that you checked out that email. Really important that we review some of this and come prepared so we can just make so much more of our time. I had specific language written down here, which is, if you engage in this with just 5 minutes or 10 minutes before we meet, we're really going to be able to cover 10 times more ground and have a higher quality conversation. So you're framing what they're doing for you as actually a benefit for them. Because nobody's going to say, I don't want to have a higher quality conversation. Nobody's going to say, I don't want to cover more ground. When we want to get somebody else to do something for us, we actually want to frame it as a benefit to them. And we want to hit them more than we think we need to. And there's always that little red in the face, like, am I bothering this person? Am I being a nuisance? And the truth is that part of your job is to bother them and be a bit of a friendly nuisance, because on some level they want to do this. But just like a coach calls you and says, hey, remember, we're training tomorrow, come ready, a part of your job is going to be to poke them just a little bit more than they're always comfortable with. But then immediately deliver on the promise, meaning you prod them a little bit and they're like, oh, okay, I guess I'll get to this. But then when you have a meeting, it's like, oh, wow, we really covered a lot of ground there. I feel like the light bulb has come on. I've learned so much. We've come to so much clarity in this meeting. So all those little pokes that create annoyance will immediately go away when the promise is delivered of, oh, wow, we did actually cover way more in that meeting than I thought we would.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. And just remember, the language is always, and ChatGPT can be your friend here. If you're looking for 10 different ways to say something that is uncomfortable, how do I say this, but position it as a value to them? Or how do I soften this and make it seem more enticing? And so when you say, hey, if you're willing to just give me 10 minutes of prep time, I can really cover 10 times more ground when we get there. Or, hey, this is a way for you and your group to align around a little bit more consensus before the call, so that the call isn't all about creating consensus for your group. It's actually, we can go from the 80. One of the analogies I love is, hey, this material is going to get you from the 0 to the 80-yard line, so that in our call, we can take it from the 80-yard line to the finish line. So that some of these analogies can be really helpful in clicking people and going, oh yeah, I really do want to go. I don't want to get stuck at the 80-yard line at the end of our meeting. I'd really like to take it all the way to the finish line in this meeting.
And since you're in a more of a leadership role, another way to just, politely assert your boundaries, if it is a really important meeting and they absolutely must come prepared, you could just say, hey, can you let me know by whatever, this evening, end of day, if you've reviewed those materials? If you don't get a chance to, no worries. We can reschedule our meeting for a later date when you have had a chance to review them, just so that they understand it is a required precursor and that you respect your time enough, and their time really, that you really want to make it an impactful meeting for both parties.
This is helpful. It's clicking with something we've already been thinking about when it comes to helping them prepare for interviewing. That, my baseline information is the same for everybody. I ought to just make a video about that and say, you watch it as a group, figure out where your questions are, what's unique about your context, and then we're going to schedule a Zoom to talk through your questions without me having to take the 45 minutes or whatever for the basic information.
Yes, definitely.
I'm just throwing this in as a little cherry on the cake. One of the things that we've done before is I'll not only schedule the calls that I'm going to have with the client, when I've got the client in the onboarding call, I'll have them schedule their prep work time, and not schedule it in the hour before the call. Schedule it at least a day or more than a day before, so you can get that subconscious domino falling. So if they're 24 hours, 48 hours before the call, getting their group together for an hour and watching a video that you made and say, hey, this is just a 20-minute video or it's just a 15-minute video. I want you guys to watch this and absorb it, come up with questions, then, sit on it for a day or two. Let it work its way into your brain. Then we'll have our call. And what you can do that's a really handy trick is say, let's go ahead and schedule those onto your calendar right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that makes sense, because so much of what I do with people, it's new information, it makes them anxious and stuff. It would be far better for them to be having information, mulling on it, so that then we can have real dialogue about what that information means, when it's harder to have that dialogue immediately after the information's delivered.
Yeah. And that sort of brings us to one of the other major themes, which is, now that you have all of this information that you've been in the process of transferring and you have a lot of experience with that, how can we actually slim down and shape that content in a better way? Something that Demir and I have learned is people actually don't want more. People actually want a lot less. And at the beginning of our journey with Lifehack Method, we would create just hours and hours and hours of content and super long, in-depth trainings. And what we've learned is actually it's a skill to bring those down into what we call lightning lessons. So now what we're trying to do for every single training that we have is create a sub 5-minute version of that training to really give people the cliff notes and be like, okay, here's what this is all about. And then they can listen to that and hopefully be convinced that they need to do the deep dive training, but at the very least, give them that foundational overview of what it is. So a lot of these things, a lot of the content that you're delivering to your clients can probably be modified in a similar fashion. particularly through video, and really used to just get them pumped and excited and on your team and on your side about what you're trying to do in this next step of their journey.
Part of the challenge is I love the idea of storytelling. I mean, that's what my life has been about. But then that's often at odds with making it short.
I will say, Mitch, into that, people will give you more time for a story than they will for instructions. This is where you can cheat the rules a little bit. If you tell a good story, you'll earn a little bit more of their time through compelling storytelling than you would, if somebody's going to give you 10 minutes for a story, they probably would have given you 2 or 3 minutes for that same raw information, just transferred in a boring step 1, step 2 manner. So you do earn a little bit of extra time to tell a story. Also remember, analogy and metaphor is great too. So a lot of times I'm Mr. Analogy, Mr. Metaphor. I'm always asking myself, instead of taking them through a 15-minute training, is there an analogy that could just shortcut this? Right to the end, where it's like this. And then all of a sudden the light bulb goes on and they just think about it. So for the sake of covering the ground that we want, I think we've talked a lot about slimming the content, shaping the content, thinking about what modality is right for what content. Some content could be delivered in just sort of an audio format. Some could be a Loom video or a visual walkthrough. Some could be a straight to camera delivery. Others could just be, a written case study. Hey, read this case study. But just asking yourself, what's the right modality here? Carey, do you mind if I move to the next one?
Let's do it.
Yeah. The next one would be, so we referenced this, but I want to dive into it for a second, which is just-in-time delivery of information. So you can sketch out the process, but for me, part of earning trust in the beginning and doing a rough sketch, very rough, very high level sketch of here's the entire journey up the mountain. I'm here for you because there could be 5, 6, 7 different ways that we could journey up this mountain. Here's some great case studies that elucidate how the journey could be so different depending on it. But just know that I've been up and down this mountain so many times. You can feel safe with me to take this journey with you. I'm probably going to modify and customize your journey, not just today, sitting here right now at the beginning, but even as we progress through the journey, I might take the moment to customize the journey. So because of that, I'm not going to dump everything on you right now. I'm just going to give you the next step or maybe the step after where it's relevant. And I want you to trust me that I'm not withholding. I'm actually giving you a benefit, which is it might be tempting to get the whole journey, but it's also quite overwhelming to try to hold in your mind what step 9 looks like when we haven't even finished step 1. So there's a lot of common sense head nodding where it's, oh yeah, I guess I shouldn't be spending any of my precious time and energy with my group thinking about step 9 when we haven't even done step 1. I can just trust that Mitch is going to give me step 9 when step 9 is relevant. And at that point, he'll be customizing it to me and only giving me what I need to know. So you want to get their buy-in in the beginning, do a rough sketch, get that trust and that you almost want to get them to say yes to that. I can see that there's literally a moment, will you trust me in this process to give you just what you need, nothing that you don't need? And you know what I'm saying? To the extent that you actually get them at least once to say yes to that, that verbal yes actually ends up being a lot more important than you think it does. And then you can move on. Then that gives you the permission to just piecemeal out, okay, here's the next step. And here's why this step is important. Again, micro case studies can come in really, so we're on step 4. And here's a micro case study of where people did step 4 right and why that was important for them. And here's 3 case studies or 1 case study in how somebody tried to skip step 4 or didn't respect step 4 and it didn't go so well with them, right? So you can even puncture in like 1 paragraph little or 2 paragraph little micro case studies that help people really anchor into why is this step not just another annoying step in the process that I want to skip, but I should respect this step. And this step is here for a reason. And Mitch is putting it in front of me because it's actually important. And things could actually go wrong if I don't respect the mountain, right? Instead of looking at the top, maybe I should be looking at my feet and navigating the crevasse that's right in front of me right now. So the crevasse, we're looking at right now is step 4. Let's focus on step 4, because if not, we could fall off the ladder and, end up in a crevasse, right? So I think if you put together everything we've talked about so far, which just for the benefit of the listener is, evolving the concept of the SOP to include things like stories, case studies, metaphor, maybe norms, not rules. Number 2, we talked about building trust through framing and language and making sure that we're using enticing and sometimes annoying ways to get them to actually do the work they need to do so that we can do the work that we need to do. Slimming down, shaping the content, choosing the right modality for the content. Now, when you get to just-in-time delivery, all of that is really going to benefit you, because then you can say, hey, it's just a 15-minute video. In your next meeting where you've got your group together, can you just go ahead and push play on this video and watch it all together and dialogue it together? So all of your slimming down and shaping and making the content compelling gets you to a place where now when you give them that next incremental Pez out of the Pez dispenser, it's small and they're not going to choke on it.
That sounds wonderful. My brain is already spinning on the different pieces of our process and how some of what you're saying is very affirming, because we've been doing some of this stuff or taking that. One of my analogies that I use is this is like taking a hike in a forest you've never been in before. And when you plunge in, you pick out the clump of trees you head to next. And then when you get to that clump of trees, you figure out what the next one is. So, paralleling right with the stuff that you've been talking about, what I'm getting out of this is, and this is just a good approach to the work that I do, because I'm not going to do this forever. I want somebody else to be able to do it at some point in time. I need to get the stuff out of my head, me being the only one who can deliver it. And by doing that, it's going to make it more accessible to folks. It's going to be easier if I'm video of stories and whatever. It's not just going to wait on somebody asking me the right question for me to play the right story back to them in real time.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're going to create that ripple effect, right? Because you are creating an impact right now for sure, but you're going to have so much bigger of an impact long term. You're going to leave a legacy as well when you're able to do this extra, much harder level of work in order to create this process. And I also wanted to comment on how you were saying that, hey, if I do my job right, these congregations only have to take this journey one time. And hopefully that is true, but I would say that they're going to get so much more out of it than just the end result, right? It's a lot of it are going to be the lessons that they learn along the way. They're going to be able to use that in other parts of their life. People don't climb Mount Everest just to get to the top of Mount Everest. They climb Mount Everest because of the challenge. And they want to know, they want to learn through all those challenges so that they feel that sense of fulfillment and pride at the end. So I think a lot of people, we face this with our clients as well. They come in and they want some version of The Bachelor, right? Where they're just, hey, a couple weeks and I've met my soulmate, or I'm completely fixed and all my problems go away. Of course, it's always harder and a little bit more lengthy and more difficult than that. But then that means that the solution is so much more durable and that they're going to carry it for longer and it's going to help them for longer. Yeah. So I think that that's also another potential reframe that you can bring to this work.
For the sake of time, Carey, I'm gonna put on ice the additional cherry on the cake that we were going to talk about with calendar optimization and boundary setting. There's sort of one thing I want to close on here, Mitch. One of the things that Carey and I have learned is that it is amazing how quickly somebody will forget, once they get inside a process, what brought them into that process and what keeps them plugged into that process. So for example, at the beginning of the year, I'm so jazzed up to lose weight. I say, this is the year that I'm going to lose all the weight. I make a big commitment and spend a lot of money for a trainer. And then, within a month, I'm, sweating, hating it, second guessing my trainer, looking for any kind of exit that I possibly can from the process. And so a part of our job, me and you and Carey, is that we constantly have to, quote unquote, resell them on why they're there. So by reselling them, we're not talking about money changing hands. We're talking about re-enroll. And you would think to yourself, they still don't have a pastor, or aren't they enrolled enough? I mean, isn't the fear enough? And the truth is that it's not, or that they're getting more enrolled in their fears rather than their dreams and hopes and possibilities. And so for you, I think it's about accepting that there is no amount that is too much of a third of the way in the process, half the way in the process, 60% of the way in the process, 75% of the way of the process, coming back to the fundamentals and saying, hey, I just want to remind us of why we're doing this work. We're here because you want X, Y, and Z, and you're probably feeling A, B, and C. But look at what we've done so far. Look at the ground so a big part of coaching somebody and guiding somebody, and I'm sure you know this, is taking that moment that they're not taking to applaud them for the work that they've already done, to remind them how much ground has already been covered, and re-enroll them in why they're engaging in the process. Especially, as you said, you've got case studies where people were getting frustrated and they were getting into despair. And then that was right before the moment when they found the perfect candidate. And so a big part of that would be that reselling, that re-enrolling process. I think I knew that in the beginning. And honestly, if I could get in a time machine, I'd go back and be like, you don't know that nearly as much as you think you know that. Or that is 100 times more important than you're currently giving it weight for. Because there's always a person who maybe missed 2 meetings and now they're here in the 3rd meeting, or, a person who heard it at the beginning, but they've forgotten it by the middle. And so constantly coming back around and maybe repeating things that you just think, gosh, do they really need to be repeated? And the answer is 100 times yes. And often it only takes 20 seconds in a meeting to ground, re-anchor, re-enroll, or applaud and celebrate. Look at what we've done together. Or even say, a lot of times people just need to hear you're doing it right. I'm the expert. I've seen you're doing it better than 80% of congregations, because they're sitting there. All they can feel is that it's anxious and uncertain and hard. And so to hear, oh, you're doing better than 80% of the congregations I work with. Well, okay, that makes me feel good, and they're coming away feeling I'm not doing this so bad. So just wanted to end on that note of there really is no such thing as too much re-enrollment and celebration and reassuring.
Yes. Yeah, totally. That helps a lot, because usually my background is in science and computer programming. And so I'm sort of linear to whatever, but that idea of helping to recenter, re-anchor, I need to remember to do more as we're ready to take the next step. We're going to celebrate where we've come so far.
Yeah, totally. Carey, I want to toss to you for some final thoughts here. How's this landing with you?
Gosh, it's just been such a pleasure talking with you, Mitch. You're so coachable and you've made so many great strides already. I just can't wait to hear your updates on this. Make sure to keep us in the loop of what you're changing, what's working, what's not working, and keep us just apprised of all these cool developments.
We'll be happy to.
And for you, Mitch, if you're going to pull out one major sort of aha moment or thing that you're taking away from this, what would it be?
I think it is that reimagining the SOP, taking a hard look at what I'm delivering to people, and in some ways paring it down, but also, as you said, looking at the different modalities, because we all know people learn in different ways. And so trying to deliver that in a different way. And I think that, helping people, delivering the right information in a very engaging way makes them more willing to wait for the next batch.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for being a tribe member, Mitch. You're doing fantastic. I'm just so glad to hear the progress so far, and I can't wait to hear the updates, man.
Thank you both. I appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Mitch. Nice to see you.
Thank you. This has been great. It's been like having a conversation with 2 of my heroes. So
thank you, brother.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mitch.
Bye.